All right, let's move on to some under the radar guys, because this has always been where the best business is done in free agency. We always get caught up in the big names, the marquee guys, the where the day one pursuit is done, but it's the under the radar guys that don't cost as much that are always the best signings, always. And I think now, I don't know, maybe this was just last year or the last couple of seasons, and it's not really a trend, but it feels like teams are actually starting to prioritize these guys on day one. Like they're not waiting until after the big names have gone. They're just signing the guys they want anyway, right away. So who are some under the radar guys that you think are worth keeping tabs on?
I think two defensive linemen jump out to me. One is Agbania Okoronkwo with the Houston Texans last year, a guy that came into the year was a rotational player and then later in the season basically made him a full-time starter. And a lot of times we see production dip when you get more snaps. He actually played better as he was playing more. I want to say from like week 7 on he was like top 10 in pressure rate, top 10 in pass rush win rate, had like a 90 plus pass rush grade from, week 7 or so on, at the end of the season. I think he fits more as a stand-up outside linebacker. I saw Matt Bowen of ESPN who does a great job with free agency as well. Thought he could play in an even front and be a hand in the dirt type of guy, but I think isn't going to break the bank. And I think is at least based on the small sample size we had of where he finally played a lot, was really, really effective for Houston.
Yeah, it's funny. Like we loved that signing a year ago. Like that was one of the signings Houston made where we're like, that guy could end up being a steal in a bigger role for Houston. He flashed some previously. Like it's perfect for him. And then it didn't happen for the first half of the year at all. Like they weren't playing him as much. He wasn't making an impact when he was played. But you're right. Like in the second half of the season, we kind of saw that guy. But when you sort of look at his year as a whole, it would be easy to miss it because the net of those, the first half and the second half, don't look spectacular. But for the second half of the year, he actually became the kind of steal signing that we thought he would be. So I'm with you. I'm really interested to see, one, if Houston tries to bring him back, because he ended up becoming the player that they thought he would be, just took a while to get there, or B, if it's just a year later that we see that guy, like somebody else makes the same signing essentially and he ends up becoming the steal for them that he could be. I think quietly, edge rusher is actually a sneaky strength of this free agent class. Like it's not, the superstars. There's no amazing guy. I saw Zadarius Smith. Zadarius Smith seemed to kind of, you ever watch The West Wing?
Yeah, a long time ago.
You remember there was a bit in that where they sort of said, I find that if you just skip over asking somebody to do something and announce that they've done it, they find it very difficult to backtrack from that, right?
Yeah,
So
that was
Darius
movie
Smith,
bold.
yeah, so Darius Smith effectively just decided to act like they'd been released and hope that the team would go, all right, cool, yeah, we'll see you. Only they said no. So he just like said goodbye. I'm gone. Thanks for the memories, Minnesota, but I'll be leaving in free agency now, and asked for his release. And they were like, no, you're still under contract. We're gonna keep that for a bit. So that was kind of strange. But let's assume he's not hitting free agency for the moment. But Okoronkwo, two of my under the radar guys, Arden Key, who's become a really good sort of rotational guy in that at least packed on some muscle deep into his career. And Melvin Ingram, who's just always good. Always. Doesn't matter how much he's going to play or how old he is, he will be a really good rotational pass rusher for some team.
Yeah, you mentioned, I agree with you. There's none of the big names, but there's a ton of depth here. There's the older guys, like you said, Melvin Ingram, Justin Houston, Brandon Graham. Then there's, Samson Ebukam and Charles Omenihu and Arden Key. Like there are a lot of mid-tier guys, which again, like that is usually how you win in free agency. So yeah, I like your list here a lot. This is the way you usually win. I know fans and, maybe it's not exciting. You want us talking about these huge names on day one. You've seen how those deals pan out a lot of the time. It's not particularly great.
The Melvin Ingram, if you ignore the 2013 season where he played like 200 snaps, has never had a pass rushing grade below 66.4. That was his rookie year. And if you take that out, he's never had one below 73, just every year. So in his prime, he was an 80 plus, 89 at his peak pass rushing grade kind of guy, like genuinely as good as it got really in the NFL. And then the kind of post peak Melvin Ingram has just been a really good pass rusher who's had varying amounts of playing time, right? Ranging from a full-time 1,000 snap a year guy for the Chargers to scaling it down to 600 to 400 at one point. The Kansas City Pittsburgh year was 700. Last season with Miami was 536. But he had 38 pressures, 8 sacks, 78.9 pass rushing grade. Like, sure, he's sort of slowing down in the sense of he's 33, 34 years old and not the guy that he used to be, but it probably doesn't get any better than that for a 400, 500 snap rotational body on your defensive line. And the Eagles are showing that that kind of template of, we don't need one guy that plays 1,000 snaps and dominates. If we have 7 guys along the defensive line, each of whom can come in, get some pressure, contribute, play 20 snaps a game, you add all that up, that's the best pass rush in the NFL as a unit. So if any team is saying, well, instead of getting one 1,000 snap guy, let's get 2 guys that play 500 snaps, Ingram can be one of those guys and be an absolute steal.
Done it the last couple of years. They're an interesting one where a little bit different, but I know his knees are a bit of a concern, but
right.
We know how random and variant injuries are. So you're basically taking a very low risk contract wise, flyer. Like Jason Verrett, of course, with San Francisco the first time around, it was like one of the best value signings the entire offseason. Of course, there's an inherent risk there, but if they stay healthy and you can help them stay healthy by playing them in a more rotational capacity, like you said, you can get a ton of surplus value. He's been that way the last, 2 or 3 years now.
Mm-hmm. Who else is on your under the radar list?
Yeah, I think Morgan Fox, the interior defender with the Los Angeles Chargers this past year, is also flying very under the radar. Had a pass rush grade of 71, had 40-plus pressures, 6.5 or 7 sacks. And is a good, kind of a younger player. We're talking about a lot of the older guys. I think maybe there's some concern about how he can hold up against the run. But if you want a guy that can just, again, get upfield from the interior, that you put it in out front and kind of let him serve in that capacity. Maybe he doesn't only plays 500 snaps, not 800, but he's darn good at what you ask him to do. He was very good last year.
Yeah, I think coming out of that defense, because it's just collectively so terrible against the run, you assume that all of their interior players have not played well. But okay, as you say, against the run, maybe not so much, but as a pass rusher, and again, if you're projecting him into a better defense that doesn't need him to defend the run as much, he can definitely make an impact. Another guy, similar kind of style, actually, Matt Ioannidis, the Carolina Panthers defensive tackle, a guy that just always gets pressure. I mean, anyone that listens to the show knows that I've been a fan of Ioannidis since college, but he's good. He's disruptive. He will always cause problems for a defensive line. Again, if you're looking for one of those rotational bodies, a guy that can play 400 or 500 snaps on the interior over a season, he will get you 30, 40, maybe 50 pressures, depending on how much game time he's getting. And that's valuable.
It's so valuable. And we see more and more in today's NFL, like trying to get upfield from the interior. And it's a hot button topic. I'm sure you guys have discussed it 100 times, and he's another guy where I think injuries have kind of limited his market a little bit. But again, if you have him in a more rotational capacity, keep him fresh, keep him healthy, he's going to produce every year.
So we've got a couple of pass catchers between us. You've got Mecole Hardman from the Kansas City Chiefs. I've got DJ Chark and Irv Smith, who I think are interesting names. Now, none of these guys are obviously cast iron superstars or guys that are going to dominate, but Mecole Hardman has been that gimmick guy in the Chiefs offense with insane playmaking skills, and everybody sort of always thinks maybe he can be something more in a bigger role. DJ Chark is that, he's Steve's Will Fuller, right? The guy that you always take a flyer on because if the 1 year he stays healthy, he's shown the ability to cause problems deep down the field, even if he is a one-dimensional kind of guy. And then Irv Smith has just been wrecked by injuries so far in his NFL career, but the Vikings always loved that guy. Like every time it was like, this is the year Irv Smith is going to cook in this offense. And multiple different coaches said that. Like it wasn't one guy who just fell in love with him. If he can stay healthy, he's the kind of guy that could show up one day, like 6-7 years into his career and put up like 800 yards and 8 touchdowns.
He 100% is. I have to name drop now or story drop now. But when I interned there, get in the elevator on the first day, and Irv Smith standing there, and it was the 3 interns and the person who was showing us around, and all of us, we knew immediately who it was, and he just got drafted that year. But like you said, every single offseason, he's the guy where they were saying he's having an incredible camp. If he can stay healthy, he's going to break out. And I know you hear that, and we kind of mock that in a lot of ways, but there's a reason we hear that, right? And so if eventually he can stay healthy, he's never had like a debilitating, terrible ligament tear. It's a lot of like ankle and shin, and look, it's not great. It's all soft tissue, but Yeah, I love that one. I think there's a lot of teams that could use a player like that. He's not a bad blocker by any means. I mean, you want him to be a pass catcher, but he's not a liability from that perspective either. So I think he's where you say, like, we look back next offseason, if he stays healthy, he could be the guy we're all saying, like, wow, what a great value that X team got in signing Irv Smith Jr.
You got two more names to list: linebacker Drew Tranquil and cornerback Rocky Yassin. Tell me in particular why you think Rocky Yassin is a potential good signing for the under the radar signing.
Yeah, so and it's funny. The last three here, the Mecole, Rakicine, and Drew Tranquil, I kind of took a different direction where I think the amount of money they're going to get is under the radar because I think all three guys are going to do probably better than a lot of people expect. But
Okay.
for Rakicine, you look at this cornerback class, and if you're trying to find an outside cover corner that can play press man up on the line, it's Jamel Dean and it's Rock Yassin. Like, unless you want to get into the 32, 33-year-old waters with some of those guys, or I guess you want to trade for a Darius Slay at this point. So I think that's why. He has the tools and traits to be that player. If you look at Justice Press man coverage snaps, was top 25 among corners over the last two seasons. Yes, he got traded to the Raiders. But Patrick Graham clearly saw value in him, likes to play a lot more of that man coverage. So yeah, I think that's part of it as well. Is just like it's a very old corner class. I know Tom Pelissero put out yesterday that Byron Murphy could get up to $16 million a year, which is insane to me. A good player has inside-outside flexibility, but for me, if you want a multi-year fix at outside corner that can play man coverage, I think it's really two players, Jamel Dean and Rock Yassin.
Yeah, Rock Yassin, I think, is a very scheme-specific player at this point. Like, he is that man cover type of corner. Like him, the New England Patriots would be a fascinating place for him to land this offseason because I don't think we know yet whether the Patriots really still want to run that type of defense, and they just didn't have the guys to do it last year, or if they have kind of moved away from that style of defense the way the rest of the league has. But the signing of a guy like Rock Yassin would tell you which way. Like, if they bring a guy like him in, it's like, no, we want to run man cover corner. We want to run man coverage again. We just didn't have players we trusted to do that last season. We're going back to the Belichick style of defense this year.
Yep, no, 100%. And I think it was, my guess, it was more about just not having the bodies. I mean, we were playing, Jalen Mills and Jonathan Jones, and no disrespect to either guy, but guys that, no, but it's just like you're not going to play a bunch of man coverage with 5'10", like, hybrid slot / safety / corner. Like, those guys are not playing press man on the outside. So, maybe, like you said, it's probably a big tell if they sign a guy like him, what direction they want to go.
I'm only laughing because we've thrown plenty of disrespect in the way of Jalen Mills over the course of his NFL career. So you adding to it probably wouldn't move the needle at this point.